Welcome, welcome, welcome. And thanks for joining us today for our session. I hope you didn't have any issues connecting to our new event management platform, Bevy. Appreciate you joining. I'm really, really excited about today's presentation and our special guest, Felicia. So we're just going to do a quick overview of the new platform. Hopefully you've already joined. If you have any issues with it, please put in the chat or you can DM me. Let me know. This is a first time using this software, but we all moved from Splash um, to this new site. And for those who are joining us for the first time, this is a group that supports all things analytics, especially Tableau, and it's the intersection of Tableau and advancement. There are so many opportunities to learn with Tableau and advancement, such an incredible use case for it. Today's special guest is Felicia. She is joining us from Playfair Analytics. And after her session, we will be doing a Tableau raffle to win $100 to a $100 spending spree at the Tableau site. So make sure you can stick around and pick up some swag, hopefully. And I'm going to pass it on to Felicia to begin today's presentation.
Screen. Okay, can everybody see it? Looks good?
Looking good.
Okay, all right. So I'm Felicia Steyer, and I am the Associate Director of Analytics Solutions at Playfair Data. This means I spend a lot of time troubleshooting Tableau issues, finding creative solutions for any type of data problem our clients might have. And then if you're a Playfair subscriber, you might have seen some of my blog posts. There was one that went out, I think, last week on optimizing your Tableau workbook file size. And then another recent one about using Tableau's physical layer to combine tables. So yeah, that's where you might have seen me. I'm based out of our KC office. I've also lived in St. Louis and Florida. I saw somebody out there is with Wichita State. So yay, Kansas. Yeah. Outside of Tableau, I really enjoy board games and hiking. These are some pictures I took on a quick nature walk over the July 4th weekend. I just moved to Kansas City like 2 years ago, and I've really been enjoying how beautiful it is here. Like I did not expect this much nature. So it's been pretty nice. I definitely recommend KC. Yeah. If you're looking for me on social media, I generally use the handle Graphhopper. So I'm pretty active on Twitter, Reddit, and Tableau Public. And then you might have seen my work with the hashtags Tableau Question of the Day or Tableau 365. So what is Tableau 365? It is my mission to answer 365 Tableau questions over 2023. This actually started back in December of 2022. At the beginning of December, I was like, oh, it'd be fun to do an Advent project where I answer a question each day and then write it up on Twitter and share it back with everybody else. And this project was really rewarding and great, but it took a lot of time because I found that I was generally answering like 3 or 4 questions before I found one that was really worth writing up. And those write-ups also took a long time, like almost as long as answering the questions, which I wasn't expecting. So I took some time and found a way to make it more sustainable for me. So then in February of 2023, I launched Tableau 365. So this project has a lot more flexibility in it. I'm not going to be highlighting every question. And then I also have the flexibility to skip days. So I'll answer like 3 or 4 questions one day, take a couple days, and then do another batch. So this has been just a lot more sustainable. I actually have a progress tracker up on my Tableau Public that you are totally welcome to check out. As of yesterday, I've answered 193 questions. I'm just past that halfway point, and I've caught up I missed February, so I had to catch up a month. So I'm just getting caught up now for those like extra 30 days. So yeah, that's our current state. And then some people are asking like, why do I do this? So I don't know if you've ever had the experience of spending a bunch of time on maybe like an Iron Quest project or like a really cool portfolio piece, and you launch it and announce it to the community, and then nothing happens. Like you're just putting it into the void. And that's a great way to learn. But like I like knowing that there's somebody on the other end of that post. So with answering questions, I know there's at least one other person involved in that communication. And I know that my work is making an impact on that person. I also have a really full schedule. So I found that a lot of times with those big, more ambitious projects, I was picking them up and putting them down and picking them up and putting them down, and then just abandoning them for a new project. So with this project, I can get an answer together in 30 minutes or less, get it wrapped up, get it logged, and then move on with my day. So it's a lot more sustainable. This is all about finding ways to be involved in the community that work for me. And then finally, I learn a lot doing this. The questions that people ask are so diverse. They come from all kinds of different industries that I would have never experienced in any other way. They use weird data structures. They've got these crazy use cases that I've never seen other places. So it's a great way to like learn flexibility and creativity. And then finally, I just love solving problems. It's really addictive. The rush when you find something, you find a solution for something that you thought maybe isn't possible. It's excellent. So what does this process look like? First, I check the DataFam hashtag on Twitter. I just put in the hashtag, check latest, and I do this because usually there's not a question there, but when there is, a lot of times it's somebody that maybe doesn't have a big following. They put a question out onto Twitter and then they're getting crickets. And that feels awful. So I want to just check and see if there's anybody out there getting crickets and I can give them an answer. This usually doesn't yield me questions though. So next I go over onto Reddit and I specifically look for the r Tableau subreddit. And then I will sort it by new and look for questions that have like maybe 0 or 1 comment. I look for the ones with the least amount of engagement and start there. And then finally, if I'm not finding anything on Twitter and I've got like a really good window to answer some questions, I'll go over to the Tableau forums. This tends to be a little bit more formal, and I know I'm going to need my laptop because these questions get more involved. So it's harder to do on the go. So once I've identified some questions, then I start evaluating like, is it a good question for me to answer? So the first thing to check is like, has that already been answered? And it's pretty obvious. So here somebody is trying to recreate some views with a new data source. Pretty straightforward problem. And somebody's already given a pretty good solution. So they've said, oh yeah, try using replace references. Or if you want a description, because their question is a little bit unclear, you can use a caption. Is this a great answer? I don't have anything to add. So let's check the next question. So this is a question about Salesforce Data Cloud objects. I've never used that. It's outside my area of expertise. So anything about embedding, Tableau server, extensions, TabPy, those are all going to be something that is better for somebody else to answer. So I'll go for that. Next is the post recent. So maybe I'll see a post that doesn't have any engagement. It's an easy question, but it's a couple weeks old. So this question was posted 17 days ago. That's like 2 weeks. Hopefully they found a solution for their issue. So it's probably not worth answering. And then finally, am I in the right place to answer that question? Like I could see a really interesting question that I want to answer, but maybe I don't have my laptop with me, or it's been a really long day and I know that I don't have the mental energy that I need to work a nested table calc. And so in these cases, I'll flag the question. Maybe somebody else will get to it, or maybe I'll get back to it when I've had some time to rest or I have the equipment that I need. So now that we've identified our question, now we need to understand what are they asking. And this is surprisingly like gathering requirements for a project. I knew that this would be a great exercise for learning new technical skills, I didn't realize how many soft skills would also come with answering questions. So here's a question that I answered a couple of weeks ago. And so they're asking about adding a fifth column to this table that uses a separate mark type. And so I'm looking at this and I'm not totally sure how this table was built. So I can see that there's 4 different columns, but I don't know if this was used using the placeholder method with like 4 separate measures and they have 4 marks cards already. Or are they using 2 marks cards somehow with a divider, or like, I don't know what's going on here. So I'm going to go forward with the easiest possible solution, which is just adding a 5th placeholder here to add a 5th marks card. And then maybe they're having some issues like customizing that marks card. So I give a reply and they say, oh, I tried that and it's not working because of this reason. And what's great is that this clarification gives me the information I need in order to understand how their current view is built. So now that I have that understanding of the question, I can replicate it using Superstore data. So I create a view that has measure names on a column. So I'm like, okay, so if they have this here, what do I need to do to make it look like theirs? And so I figure out that they're using measure values, just 1 marks card with separate legends per measure. So now I can test out possible solutions to get that 5th column in and then give a more detailed reply. So I confirm what they're seeing and I suggest adding that column with an additional sheet if they don't want to change their view, or they can replace the view using 5 placeholders. And so then finally, they've got a follow-up question about header names, help them out with that, and the question is resolved. So that's what the process looks like. Then there's a 4th step, which I don't do with all questions, but that is sharing that question back with the larger community. And what really surprises me is that sometimes that original question and the summary that I share with the community don't resemble each other at all. So like this question originally is asking like a very specific question around calculations. They're saying, I want to calculate this percentage between the two. This is what my data structure looks like. How do I get this percent? And instead, my final answer is all about data structures. So when I go to write it up, it's a completely different approach. So I'm talking about, oh, I've got a union and I need to join, but I don't have control over the data structure. How do I make that happen? Because at the heart of it, that's what the takeaway was from the question, even though it's a completely different approach. So it's almost translating the question back to a more general audience, because most of us don't really, we're not worried about warranties and furniture. It's this bigger concept that is worth sharing. So that, like I said before, that can take as much time to get that summary right as it is to actually answer the question. Finally, I've got some tips for getting your questions answered. The first biggest tip is tag me. If you're on Twitter, Reddit, the Tableau forums, just at me and I'd be happy to answer it, add it to my catch, like, because I need to answer a bunch of questions this year, so you can help me that way. But then, so specifically for Twitter, Twitter is a great tool for connecting to people and building an audience. It's not a great tool for asking questions because those questions get buried under everything else that's going on, all the community projects and the socialization. Your audience is going to be limited to who you're connected to. Unless your post gets some activity, it's not going to be seen by anybody else. And then personally, I find the threading on Twitter to be difficult to navigate because you can have multiple threads going on at the same time in different places. You can't see them on the same screen. It's a little bit complicated. So some tips for Twitter: if you're going to ask questions on Twitter, make sure to tag people. That could be me, that could be an ambassador, a visionary. The Flurlage twins are really great about answering questions. And then always try to be clear with your question. On Reddit, again, I think it's pretty easy to access. It's got good alerts and notifications. I think the threading is better over here, so it's easier to follow a conversation. And your connections don't matter as much. Each post is equally weighted at the start. And then it's the engagement on that post that determines whether it goes up or down. The really great thing about the Tableau subreddit is that most posts get at least one reply. but your audience is going to be pretty limited. Like it's not a very active forum. There's maybe like 10 or 12 posts per day. And while the Tableau subreddit is friendly, Reddit as a whole can be kind of messy. But yeah, it's a great place to get informal answers to your questions. And then finally, we have the Tableau forum. This is going to be your absolute best place to get advice from experts or employees. And the forum's really great about incentivizing engagement. So almost every question gets answered, and it gets answered quickly. So within an hour, you're going to have an expert answer to your question. The cons are that it's harder to work with. So like they don't have an app, it's not very mobile friendly. And then there are some UX quirks around tagging and alerts that mean that your question might get answered and you might not see that answer. So make sure you manually go back and check what's going on. They also they have a culture of being very clear and including examples. So if your question doesn't have that level of clarity or it doesn't have a workbook attached, you might be judged a little bit. And then they're like, oh yeah, include a workbook before I'll answer this. So yeah, know that it's got that higher barrier to entry, but you're going to get a great answer. Finally, this is what I'd use each platform for or suggest using it for. I'm going to say 90% of the questions that I've answered have come from Reddit just because it's that great balance of being easy to access, but having a lot of questions and being able to navigate it. I'm on all of these. I'll see it if you tag me. Yep. I've got some time for Q&A. I think I went through that faster than I was planning to. So yeah, any questions for me? Happy to field them.
Yeah, feel free to put stuff in the chat. So, it's it was illuminating to know that people are engaging with the Tableau community across multiple channels beyond the forum. And so those who are just starting out, there is a wealth of information out there and a number of resources, I think pretty unique just to the Tableau platform. And you've also sort of figure out a way to, both help people and learn on your own. I'm curious, and it's such a wonderful resource. I mean, sometimes it's faster to go through the forums and through probably Reddit and Twitter than sometimes support. What are some of the things that so kind of globally you've learned about kind of requirements gathering? Are there certain Tableau tricks or use cases that come to mind that you've learned over this period of time?
Yeah, so with requirements gathering, specifically for Tableau questions, I found that it can be really useful to go ahead and open Tableau and just try and replicate what you're seeing. Because occasionally there's a question that looks really simple and it's like, oh yeah, just put a table calc on that. And then you go and you open up Tableau and you're like, oh wait, because they're using color in this way, or because they're using this mark type, there's a quirk to it, or the normal approach isn't going to work. So really having that empathy to say, no, if they're asking a question, there is a genuine problem going on here, and trusting that the asker has already tried something and done a little bit of due diligence before coming to the forum. And I think that mirrors its way into business requirements gathering, assuming that like if somebody says the data comes in over email each day, they've probably tried to like connect to an API or something else. And maybe there's a skills gap there, or maybe like that's genuinely the easiest way to get something out of this legacy tool that they're working with. So yeah, just going in with trust and empathy would be my biggest requirements gathering thing. Yeah.
I think that the trust and empathy, that empathy for your users is a soft skill that is it's just foundationally and fundamentally crucial, right? Like in order to be able to help people, because ultimately, no matter the technology, the goal is to help people, not to produce just a thing, right? So it sounds like you really kind of honed in your skills around the requirements gathering process. And that sounds maybe even as an unexpected benefit.
Completely. Yeah, I really knew that this was going to be a great way to build technical skills, and I didn't expect as much of an impact on the soft skills end of things. So that's been a surprising learning out of this project.
Excellent. Uh, are there times when people want to have more engagement beyond virtual engagement, where they want to connect with you, and if maybe someone's even on this call who wants a mentor or someone who's just I think I've seen like just a phone a friend or something like that. Do you have any recommendations for them?
Yeah, so if you want to work with me specifically, go ahead and get in touch. I've got lots of contacts. Contact me on any platform, go for it. And while I'm doing this project, like I'm happy to answer questions, totally open. Um, I will say if you have something that takes, is going to take like hours and hours of work, I might point you in the right direction and send you off. That's occasionally happened. And, after like 5 or 6 back and forth, you have to be like, all right, here's the topic, here's some resources, go for it. But that's been a pretty rare problem. So please feel free to tag me with your questions. And then if you want to get the Playfair, if you want to be a Playfair subscriber, it's totally free. It's like a weekly blog post or resource. We've got a QR code. So
Very cool. Yeah, it's
yeah.
I've definitely check out that website. During my Tableau journey, I've been inspired by the work that's on there. There's some really elegant visualizations, especially around the superstore. Like less is more, and some stunning visualizations and tips and tricks you can pick up.
Yeah, Superstore is surprisingly flexible. Like you might think it can't be used to like mock up hotel data or something, but when you get into the kernel of an issue, it's pretty rare that we need to move away from Superstore to mock something up.
Excellent.
So
So
give it a
you did reference this. We didn't talk about this, so no worries. You implied you may be open to answering some general questions.
yeah.
What is stumping you, folks? Anyone in the chat? It can be generic. Is that something you'd be open to?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. What are your struggles? Feel free to put it in there. I think I don't know if the thing that kind of that I think about, that measure names and measure values is a really powerful thing, right? Um, and there's some limitations there. Are there, I think sometimes with the Vision tooltips, I don't know if have you experienced anything in that realm where you're trying to do a Vision tooltip with the measure names across, and any suggestions there?
Yeah. So okay. So first, okay, and Samir is asking about practical resources. Okay, so measure names and measure values. I always go back to how many marks cards do you need? So with measure names and measure values, when you add them in, everything's going to be consolidated onto one marks card, but you have each row is represented once for each value. So that allows some solutions where you want a row in there multiple times. But when you need different mark types, different color rules, different label formatting, that's when you start needing to move away from measure names and measure values into something like placeholder columns.
Yeah, that's true. It's sometimes it's I've seen different workarounds where it's like you can do that for a while, but then you have to start adding worksheets,
Mhm.
potentially. I think you referenced that in one of your the earlier questions where you have to kind of float things. And I think, at the Tableau conference, that's another great way for learning. Sometimes it's affirmation that your workaround is kind of a standard workaround. And so hearing it from an expert like you kind of gives people the confidence that it may be the workaround that is a best practice. I think we have one more question here.
For general resources, I learned a lot of the tips and tricks by doing Makeover Monday and Workout Wednesday and other community projects. It's a great free entry-level way to get involved and start picking up skills. Also, I'll plug our Playfair Data blog. So if you go on here in the training section, there's a lot of free resources in like our blogs and tutorials. So I think we're a great resource. And then also check out Viz of the Days. Download them, play with them, take them apart. It's a great way to learn. Okay, have I seen an increase in the use of APIs as data sources since much data is shared in that manner? I have, and we have got a project right now that involves an API and kind of debating whether we want to do a web data connector and build a custom one, or we want to use a third party. Yeah, and it's becoming increasingly common. I hope that there becomes an easier way to connect to it, but that's definitely getting to the edge of my level of expertise when I would bring in an actual data engineer or coder to build that connection and then do the Tableau part myself. Okay, question about map vizzes. Yeah, Shane, please send it my way.
I think I elevated Shane.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi Shane.
Hey, how are you guys? So I'm hoping maybe you have, this may not even be possible, but so you have a map of the whole United States, say someplace big, and then you obviously have some data that you're trying to show them where these data points cluster together.
Okay.
But say, and you want to I want to label it for them, you know, because sometimes there's so many spots and so forth, or whatever shape you're using, on top of each other that you can't really get a clear, even if you put borders, you can't really get a clear visualization. And sometimes they'll cross over, like you can conveniently do like a whole state and just say there are 14 of these in Montana or whatever. Like that's nice. But say if the cluster is really like in the southeast corner of some state and it flows over to another state. So what would be really great is if there's some tool that would allow you to kind of like circle this cluster area, you know, instead of like going by state or count, you know, or outline a thing and then add a label or detail, a label really text, say there are 28 things inside this line I just made. You mean whether it directly applies to a state? You know what I'm saying? Is that even possible? I don't know if that is, or if you have to work with predetermined state, county, zip code, you know, whatever the case is.
Yep. So what I've added to the map here is the US metro boundaries. And so that helps a little bit because you can get kind of that clustering. Like I can see all of this is like in the Miami Broward area right here.
Do you need to be sharing your screen?
Yeah, can you share a different screen?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me reshare. I opened up Tableau, but was sharing just the window. There we go. Here's the whole screen. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So in the background layers, you can see the US metro boundaries is an option, and then also US metro labels. When you get more zoomed in, they'll start popping up. So that's going to be a straightforward solution. And then if you go into the geographic calculations, is there a geo? Oh, spatial. There is the buffer. And so this will actually create like a circle around a certain point. So if you have a way to like designate your cluster centers, you could put a buffer around it of like a certain size and then label that buffer. It becomes like a mark itself. And I'm gonna try and find you some quick resources. So those would be the directions I would start in. It's a pretty complicated question though.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, but like those would be my launching points. I feel like buffer is going to be pretty promising for you though.
Okay.
I'm going to drop this into the chat. this feels like the right direction, like what he's doing here, where it's got like the buffers with how many points are in the buffers.
Mm-hmm.
And then the great thing about buffers are, unlike these metros, you can reference them in calculations to tell, like, are they inside or outside of the buffer?
And just one more twist: if your audience is unfortunately not Tableau, so if they're not going to be working with a version of it where where it's interactive to where they can scroll over, if basically they're going to be working with some PDF or something that you produce from your Tableau.
Yeah.
Is there this buffer solution? Do you think is there a label, like a number I can have them see? Okay, like there is 14 in this buffer. Okay.
So it wouldn't be dynamic. You would be locked into like a buffer of a certain size. You would lose where he's changing the sizes, but you could add labels to these circle marks that he's added.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Love the question, and agile, impressive. Alicia, very nice.
Happy to help.
Yeah, there's a whole world of mapping questions, and I think I don't know the person's name, but there's a specialist who just does mapping. If you Google kind of Tableau map expert, there's someone who only does mapping, and she absolutely loves it. I don't know if you know who that is, but it's
Dennis?
Almost very well could be. It's just like specialist. Like there's so much you can do with mapping, and it's really exciting because you can take even polygons, and I think in a future version you'll be able to have embedded. It'll do kind of dynamic geocoding, so the lats and longs. I think that's coming. Other questions?
Dennis and Johnny are both incredible cartographers that you should totally check out if you're into mapping.
Very cool. Thank you. This was inspiring, and it's also warming, right? To know that there are people out there, that you're doing all this work, and supporting the community, because we're all learning, right? And you're learning as an expert. You're still learning, right?
Yeah,
it's
completely.
incredibly generous. We have another question.
Yeah. Ooh, some commonalities between questions. It's been so interesting because they kind of come and go in waves. Like there was one week where it was like all Tableau certification questions. We've had a week where it was like all waterfall questions from all different people asking about waterfall charts. And then some of the things I recommend the most often are those placeholder charts. I can get that pulled up really quickly. Where like you use these placeholder measures to create marks cards. I'm getting that blog post pulled up. It's one of Ryan's like early ones. I might need to find that separately. But that's a trick that a lot of people coming from Excel into Tableau need because they want to make it look like Excel. But Tableau doesn't really do that. So those fake columns with creating new marks cards lets them make measures by measure variance really nicely. Yeah, so those are some common threads. Trying to think of number formatting is always a thing. Think of the learning resources.
Oh, number formatting. What's your number formatting trick?
Oh, I actually have a whole post on number formatting that happens before this. So this is my go-to on number formatting. Oh, and let me see. Here's the Samir. Here's the link to the general blogs, and then also, if you have the Tableau community highlight, there's a bunch of community projects there. Let me pull that. Yeah, here's a community highlight where you can learn about community projects. It's the best resource to deal with the data blend issues when dealing with, oh my gosh, Jason, I am working on a blog post on this. It will be happening this year. So physical layer was the first part. Then we're going to do logical layer, and then we're going to do blends and working across data sources. My absolute best trick is to build it in a table first so that you can see what is actually happening and then build your chart after that. But blends are really rough. I would say number one, don't use a blend. So try and get it in as a relationship or a join if you possibly can. If you have to use a blend, use a table first and make sure it's doing what you think it's doing before building your view.
I can second the blend thing. Like you think it works, and then you try to do a distinct count, and then you're like,
Yeah.
that doesn't work. Oh, like let me try an LOD. That doesn't work.
So unintuitive. It's a real challenge. They have caused me also some sleepless nights. Oh my gosh, I've been looking at general, but not Q&A. Oh, Jesse, okay, I think I got your question before. Okay, cool.
I have one more general question. So there are plenty of options and opportunities to post your questions. One of the things that I struggled with at one point was not being challenged. It's really important to always learn, right? Do you have any recommendations for people who want to follow your path, but just, more casually? And they may not have 7 years worth of Tableau experience. Like what do you recommend for a good practice? First, your number one recommendation.
Yeah, it depends on what you want to grow in and what your interest is. So if you're looking for Tableau technical challenges, so learning hacks and new techniques about Tableau specifically, I would use Workout Wednesday. If you're looking at data preparation, maybe a little bit of SQL, Alteryx, Tableau prep, there's a community challenge called Prep and Data. All of these should be linked in the community highlights post that I posted a minute ago. So look for that Prep and Data challenge, which is really great because with data prep, you really need a use case to learn new techniques. And then if you're looking for kind of design and data visualization best practices, choosing chart types, experimenting with different chart types, I would choose something like Makeover Monday, Iron Quest, or like Sports Viz Sunday, where you're designing a view. Yeah, those are all really great resources. There are so many community projects out there with different levels of difficulty, engagement, and requirements. So check out that list if you're looking for a challenge. And then there's a really, really old school one, Bronson Shonk's challenge workbook, which was actually something that I used when I was first learning Tableau in like 2016. And it has a lot of the old school hacks, like reference lines for access controls or old school sheet swapping. And those can be really fundamental in finding some of those workarounds when things aren't quite working as they should. So if you can find it, it's gold, but it's kind of hard to dig up.
Are those still those are still applicable, right? Like, or are they? Those
Some
access?
are and some aren't.
Yeah, depending on just so which one can anything come to mind that's like deprecated?
I think my favorite one that I learned from there is the reference lines trick. So basically, let me just throw a view together. I want a table. Boop, boop, boop. Let's do products, categories, and sales as a bar chart. And let's say that I always want to get up to 1 million. I can throw a reference line on here on the table and I make it a constant and I put the value up to 1 million. And then I can make this line completely invisible and just hide the line, hide the font. And you would never know that there's a reference line here, but I'm still keeping that value on the axis. Reference lines can also be used to like hack labels into certain places. They're really versatile and useful. And invisible reference lines, I think, is my favorite hacky takeaway from that.
Bravo!
Old school.
I mean, think about it. When you're struggling with sometimes the absence of data, right? So if someone is they only have data for 3 months, but you need to show the full fiscal year, look, maybe that would be another use case for our audience if you want to
Yeah,
show
or when
that.
you need to show today, but your data only goes through like last month.
Brilliant. Yeah, that is very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, that's actually been another thing that crops up a few times. People they're like, all right, I need to show this data, but there's no rows of data. So common workarounds, you can use table calculations and things like running calcs to create records as long as you've got like a start point and an end date between the missing records. And so by hacking table calculations, you can get around the missing data without actually joining it to the scaffold. So it's a weird use case, but I'll throw it in the chat. Do the resources you posted cover best practices regarding dashboard design? That they don't so much. I will say I definitely live in more of the hack end of things than the best practices end of things. But there are some really great resources for that. If you look at the past Tableau conferences on Tableau's YouTube, I will drop a link in the chat for that too. I think a lot of this is also being really good at knowing where Tableau resources is. Oh, sorry, that is noisy. Here is the Tableau YouTube page. And then I think all of the conferences like pre-2018, 2019 have sessions posted up to the YouTube channel. So you might need to check out some of the older playlists up there, but there are some really good ones.
I'll be happy to share my all-time favorite UI best practice video. It is called Declutter Your Data Visualizations. It talks about Gestalt principles, so kind of grouping things together, and sort of how your brain perceives information. And this is just a wonderful, wonderful resource.
I love that. I'm definitely bookmarking that. Thanks,
That
Ron.
one is just, so less is more is the takeaway.
Yeah, that's a good guideline. I think once I finish a dashboard, sometimes I step back and I'm like, all right, and I do like review each element on it. I'm like, all right, is this line serving a purpose? Is this color useful? Do these colors mean the same thing? But I don't have a great formal resource on it. So thanks for sharing that, Ron.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, there's some cool things that you can do, and then you can kind of recreate them in Tableau once you start seeing some examples. That's awesome. Any other questions? All right, you can still put the questions in there. Thank you for all of those links. This has been such an illuminating session and inspiring as well. I think hopefully people can found a few ways just to reach out to the community, reach out to you. It's great to look outside of the advancement world because there's so many different and a larger group of people who are supporting your work. And so we are going to switch over to our next section here. Let me share my screen. All right, it's raffle time. This is for a $100 gift card. Please DM me. Although, can you even? Oh, I think you can DM me. I think you have to. I think you go to attendees, and maybe you can DM me directly. And sorry, this is the first time we're using this platform. So the question, if you can't DM me, you can just put it in the chat. And so the first person to answer this question gets a $100 gift card to the Tableau store. And the question is, at the Tableau conference that just passed, what was the biggest feature that they're promoting and is coming soon in a future version of Tableau that is the big initiative of Tableau? Go to attendees, click on links, and you can DM me. So these are new products that are coming related to Tableau. All All right, while that's happening, we are going to remind you we have the LinkedIn group for you to post additional questions. That's another place for, those are advancement specific questions. So if you haven't joined our LinkedIn group, there's about 400 of us. And that's where we say when the next events are coming up, we will be letting you know of the next event coming soon. And we will also post the answer to this question. I haven't gotten a response yet. You feel free to Google. So that works too. I'll give you guys a little bit more time. Anything else folks want to say before we sign off? All right. Felicia, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you everyone for joining us at this session. And we hope to see you in the next one. Aha, Maureen, boom, Tableau GPT. That's it. Tableau GPT and Tableau Pulse. Well done. All right. Can you DM me your email address, or I can connect over LinkedIn, because I don't have access to email addresses, but you are good to go. I will reach out. Beautiful. And thanks everyone. And look forward to see you at a future event. Take care.